Hello, very dear viewers and my students all over the world. Once again, I'm here, Dr. Zia Ahmed, recording screen recording rather, on a poem by Louis Bennet. This poem is being recorded for writing its critical appreciation as well as for understanding the lines and the background behind the poem for the benefit of my students of postcolonial literature in Namal University, in other parts of the Pakistan as well, and for my colleagues even if they want to get help out of it. It's 10 hours. So let us have a start. The poem has a very significant title, Bans a Killin, Laus Bennet. Killin is written in the style of the African speakers, Jamaican speakers, and even sometime I have heard this type of thing in USA, in North Texas as well, that they slightly drop the ending sound like it is killing. The ga sound is dropped up to some extent, and so the word remains killing. They call it Texan English. Maybe I may not be that right, but I heard this. So bans are killing. I mean, killing is being banned. One killing is being banned through this poem. And what is that killing? For this purpose, we need to know something about the writer, and after that, we also need to know about the background of the poem. So let us enter into it and see what we can discover, what we can find. But before we go further, I just want to highlight one point, that it is a particular example of post colonial literature, because every one of us remembers that when colonization took place, especially with reference to England, the English people went almost all around the world and gave their language, English language, to the people to interact with. But that English language couldn't be spoken the way English people were spoken. South Asian people, Indian, Pakistanis, they are very clever to follow the accent of the English people, and they imitated the language spoken by the British people. So, not specific varieties could be developed. But in case of Africa, in case of China, or in case of Jamaica, or in case of Southern America, many nations and communities couldn't follow the exact pronunciations and exact styles of English language. So they developed their own styles, and as a result, Creoles came into being, and mixtures of language came into being. And so there were the new varieties or the type of dialects of English language which came into being. It was right or wrong, we're not concerned with that. We are concerned about the impact of colonization with reference to language, pronunciation, etc. Moreover, this way was also suggestive of dividing the people between two major post-colonial categories, that is, the us people and the other people. So the people who could speak language, English language, in a very good way, they were in one group, and the people who couldn't speak that very language in according to the standards fixed by the English people, they were not in that us group, they were in the other group. So binary opposition with respect to language can also be found in this poem and can also be taken care of. That makes this poem the post-colonial piece of literature. Now, this is the poet, that is Bennet. Most of the time we know, but her name, as the slide is suggesting, is Louise Simone Bennet Coverlises. So, in that way, it's a very long name, but the popularity made her, sound like Bennet. So, the poet is Bennet. The picture is also visible. She was born in Jamaica. She was from Jamaica, and in she had, you know, a lot of interaction with the people, and she had visited number of places as well, and she had gone to many Western and American universities also in order to teach there. But the best thing about her is that she was with the Caribbean Carnival also, and she was the resident artist from 1945 to 1946, and she was also appointed as member of the Order of Merit for her invaluable and distinguished contribution to the development of the arts and culture. So in this way, she's not the just unknown type of poet, as somebody may call it. She is really very famous, a type of household name in Jamaica, and she has played her role in such a way, in such a good way rather, that she's known everywhere for her contributions and services and medals and the type of rewards she has been winning. She was best known for patois poetry, folklorist. The word patois needs to be little considered here. Patois is a place where people may commonly gather and talk to each other, not with reference to business, but with reference to recreation, with reference to sharing, with reference to exchanging views, spending good time. And the language which could be spoken at certain places could be called patois language. And that is why the poetry, which was done by Bennet, that is called patois poetry because it took care of the styles of the people, the way the people spoke, the pronunciation they had, and so she is therefore known with reference to patois poetry also. And she also loved her culture, and so she's also known as folklorist as well. So these are some of the characteristics of the poetess who is the poet of this poem, that is Bands a Killin. Bands a Killing by Lewis Bennet is about the dialect of English language. This poem was written in 1944, and it is actually a rebuttal of Charlie's fictional mass, in which he tried to undermine and to give lesser importance to the Jamaican English, the local Jamaican English. Now, this is very strange to say that English could be from the outside of England. It is here the word being used is local Jamaican English, as if this English is different from the real English. And yes, definitely it was, as I highlighted already. The colonial era made the language travel from England to various parts of the world. And now, some parts of the world and communities they interacted with English and gave birth to their own style of language. And so, in Jamaica, the kind of language that was spoken, it could be called a dialect of English, and that was in local terms known as Jamaican English. The differences were not many, but however, the differences were there. For example, if you look at the picture, the English sentence which is written here says, "You went to work today," and it has been written or rewritten in the Jamaican style, "You did go work today." The kind of sounds which might have been uttered by the Jamaican people, I cannot utter in the same way. But the writing shows the clear cut differences which made the Jamaican English as a different dialect from the English language being spoken by the people in England. This type of dialect, when it was spoken in Jamaica, it defined the Jamaican people. It told what is the proper and positive thing about the Jamaican people. It also reflected that this type of style reflects patois language. It reflected the cultural background and identity of the people as well. So in that way, the kind of Jamaican dialect which was developed, that was responsible for making Jamaicans proud of their patois language, and it was also making them proud because it reflected their culture, their identity, and their people as well. So in that way, a lot of importance of the Jamaican English was assigned to the Jamaican people. They were now the protectors of that type of style of language. They were not ready to change it because changing means that they would no more remain Jamaican, or their identity would not remain Jamaican. They would be something else. So, willingly or unwillingly, they tried to maintain one type of language, which is patois language, among themselves and try to speak that as well. However, that language was not that much liked by the minority ruling people. Let's go next and see. For example, it was a mixture of the colonial languages, the dialects are most of the time. And so, according to Leach and Swartwick, many Creolic and Pidgin's languages developed, and it was because of the mixture of local languages into English. And so, the feasibility of communication was made possible only because of these Creolic styles of language. It mostly happens when English language interacts with the local native dialects, but the question again is there, still there, and the same question was portrayed by Charlie's mixed fiction, where he asked the question whether Jamaican English is English or not. Especially, this question was important at the time when Jamaica was being given independence, and It was just about to start its own identity, its own nationhood. At that time, it was a big question which language should be called the Jamaican language, whether it should be the Patois language or it should be the pure English, whatever the style may be, that was to be decided. So it was at the crossroads. The Jamaicans actually wanted to preserve their cultural identity and their social status, and that could be preserved only when the Jamaican dialect of English language is used instead of using pure English dialect. So that is why the question was there whether English should be called English or the Jamaican English should also be called English language, or what decisions the Jamaican people should take in order to continue their own identity as the people from Jamaica. So in that way, this is the type of background which is working behind the writing of this poem. Some of the more things about the background are in style. First of all, we should know that Patois language, Jamaican Patois, that was widely spoken and recognized by the local people. So it was a kind of lingua franca of the people who could understand all that. And it was, yes, surely different from the standard English which was spoken by a few people, not so big majority of the people, but minority of the people that was spoken. And so the ruling elite thought that they are speaking good English. And so they are different from the local people who are not speaking good English. They were deemed to be the bad language kind of style. And not only this, it was also differentiated, or the grouping was made, or othering was made on the basis of the color, skin, and then language, the music of the people. Some of the people even thought it very offensive. For example, Branca says that it was thought that if somebody is speaking the Patois language, that person had a lower standing in Jamaica. And that is why the poem Banza Killin has been written in order to not only entertain the people but also to educate the people what they should know and what they should do. Walker, for example, highlighted the importance of praising Patois heritage because it made the people necessarily Jamaican if they used this Patois language. And if they didn't use it, it could be among the group of ruling elite who were not purely or culturally, one can say, the Jamaican people. So that is why one can say that the language of the people was Patois, that is Jamaican English, and the language of the ruling elite was pure English, as they claimed. So most of the people at the time of independence wanted to speak this language because it reflected them. So that is why if somebody tried to finish this language, if somebody tried to undermine this Jamaican dialect, people would come forward and resist to that, and that is why this poem is also not only an entertainment but also it's going to be an education. This poem bans the killing Louis Bennet has been divided by me into different parts. There are no parts in the poem. I only, for the sake of making the poem's understanding easier, have divided into different parts so that on smaller scale slides one can have good understanding of the words. And so the first part, according to me, can be read like that. So you are the man I hear about. You are the one that's made a whole lot of English oaths that say you're gonna kill dialect. So Bennett is identifying a character who is definitely Charlie, Mr. Charlie, who is thinking that he should kill the Jamaican dialect. And he has vowed several times, as the line suggests, that he would finish it in pure English. Instead of that, will be followed by the Jamaican people. And Bennett says that it's not possible. She says that, let me get it straight, Mr. Charlie. And says, for I don't quite understand, are you gonna kill all English dialects or just the Jamaican one? He puts a question in order to inquire that how English language can survive without the dialects. For example, she says that, is it only one Jamaican English dialect that you want to kill, or you are going to kill all the dialects in order to purify the language? Meaning thereby that she is trying to tell Miss Charlie that if you kill one dialect, then you have to kill all the dialects, and as a result, English would lose its importance as it will become a very lesser used language because English language has got number of dialects here and there in the world, and so every dialect is helpful in keeping English language alive and useful and living. But if dialects are killed, definitely there could be a trouble with the English language as well, and that is why a big question is asked that you are going to kill one Jamaican dialect Are you going to kill all the dialects? So, what will be the harm behind that? What will be the kind of result? That is being asked by Lewis Bennet in the very first half of the poem. The second half that I have divided says, if you have examined the English language, then what makes you feel inferior when it comes to dialects? If you can't sing Linstead Market and Watercombe, me, I, ye is actually I according to Jamaican English, and then we have to stop singing old language song and come in through the ray coming through there. So in that way, some of the examples have also been given of the Jamaican dialect. Like there are four lines which reflect the Jamaican dialect. That's Linstead, Market, and Watercombe, Me, I, and then Old Lang Song coming through there. These are the styles of the Jamaican people or Jamaican patio language. The poet puts a question that what does Mr. Charlie know about the dialects? He says that if you think that it would be inferior, then you should go and listen to these songs. These are four songs referred here that Mr. Charlie should listen to these songs, and only then he will be able to come to know that whether it is inferior or it is something great to listen to these songs. So, in that way, not only the pride of the poet is reflected, that the poet shows that she is proud of that Jamaican style of speech and the culture and literature being written in that. So, in that way, killing of one dialect, she says, will be killing of lots of culture and the identity of the Jamaican people. She continues, the language you are so proud of, which you honor and respect, poor Miss Charlie, don't you see that it springs from dialects? Now, here in these four lines, the poet is highlighting the importance of the dialects of English language. As I said already, that without the dialects, the variety, the kind of life of language finishes. It moves rapidly towards its death. But if there are dialects, if there are changes, if there are things which are improving, decreasing, happening, and then the critics continue to highlight these as well, and they continue to become the part of that. The beauty of English language is that it is absorbing almost every dialect developed with regard to English language. So the question is put to him, and advice is given to him that if you are going to destroy the dialect, don't you think that all language will be destroyed because English language is made up of the dialects of various type from here and there. Let us see how does the poet explain this. The poet says in the part 3, they have tried to turn it into a language from the 14th century. I mean, she says that there were many dialects, and the language, English language, has been developing since the time of Chaucer in the 15th century and 14th century. There were the different dialects spoken here and there in England, and they combined them together in order to make it English language. So, the English language is the language which has sprung from dialects. If somebody is there to kill the dialects, in fact, that person will be killing the language as well. So the writer has taken us to the history of making of English language, and explanation of that history comes next. 500 years have passed, and now they've got more dialects than we do. It means that in 14th century, if there were 10 or 20 dialects, then it has gone even to the number of hundreds. It has been increasing. You would have to kill the Lancashire, the Yorkshire, the Cockney, the Broad Scotch, and the Irish brogue before you start to kill me. The poet says to supposed Mr. Charlie that if he wants to kill the Jamaican dialect, then he will see that he will have to kill number of other dialects in order to purify the language. Because if killing Jamaican dialect means to purify the language, then the other dialects will have to be killed as well. For example, one dialect is from Lancashire, other is from Yorkshire, other dialect is the Cockney dialect, and this Cockney dialect has also been highlighted by the dramatist G.B. Shaw in his drama Pygmalion, and the broad Scotch, where the bigger, larger sounds are created, and the Irish type of dialect as well. Yeah, the poet says that everybody makes this language beautiful. All these dialects make the language interesting and beautiful, and different styles of speech come forward. If all these are killed, only then the dialects can be killed. Only then, but the result will be that whole English language will be killed. So this is the kind of defense and protest being made by Bennet that the Jamaican dialect should not be killed, because if it is killed, then definitely there will be a race for purifying the language by killing all the dialects which have been providing basis to English language from 14th century onward. So this is the way of the poet very pleasantly making the people realize that the Jamaican dialect should not be killed, rather, it should be sustained as the particular identity of the Jamaican people. Part 4, for example, says, you'd have to get the Oxford Book of English Words and tear out Chaucer, Burns, Lazy Gazelle, and lots of Shakespeare. Now, all these writers had their own dialects, and they have enriched the English language. The poetess says that if you kill the dialects, then you have to kill these people, their writings, their poetry, their dramas from the library books as well. When you have finished killing wit and humor, when you have killed variety, you will have to find a way to kill originality. So the next advice and next horrible foretelling comes from the poet who says that if you kill the wit and humor created by these writers, which are mentioned in the previous lines, then the variety is killed and definitely the originality will also be killed. It means that, according to the poet, originality is formed because of different sources of language. Different dialects of language, but if the dialects are killed, then originality will not be available anymore. So original language will die out as well, for example. And how are you going to read those English books? There upon your shelf, because if you drop aha, you might have to kill yourself. It means that all taste and flavor of the language will disappear. For example, Mr. Charlie's own pronunciation is a type of dialect where the ha sound is stressed. See, the Buddhist tells him that if you drop the ha sound, definitely you're going to kill yourself. So, killing of language, killing of dialects is actually killing of the people. So, that is why the writer is advising and protecting the Jamaican dialect. Writer is advising that the dialect should not be killed at all. It must remain and sustain as it is, as the patio identity of the Jamaican people. So that was the poem. Now, some of the critical comments, let's say, are here. This poem is very simply written, especially with reference to the Jamaican language and the Jamaican people. That can be very easily understood because very, very simple message of the poem is there. The message says that the dialects which have been formed out because of colonization, they need to exist because they have enriched English language instead of making it a limited language spoken by the limited number of people. These dialects have made it possible that all over the world the English language can be understood in different ways. This poem is definitely post colonial in nature because, as I already said, it goes to talk about the impact of colonization, the impact of English language, the change it has brought. For example, post colonial literature can be defined in two major terms, that is, intervention and resistance. The intervention in case of languages that local languages are disturbed and mixed with English language, and then resistance is that whatever the mixture of the language has been found, people want to maintain it. So these two things regarding the language aspect of Jamaican people make this poem a very true piece of post colonial literature. It goes to stress the importance of English language and the kind of struggle the English language has to make if the different dialects are not available, and the flourishing and livelihood of language keeps on developing because of this language. And so, languages which were of the people, local people, they have given birth to Creolic setup of the language as well. And so, therefore, English language is surviving in one way or the other. May not be so pure, but Creolic is also English language, creoles of English language. There could be some mixtures, dialects, and varieties of English language, but altogether, it is English language. All these things go to make this poem a historical document because it goes to trace how one language entered into the language of the people, how colonization began, how linguistic colonization began, and what were the responses because of that, and what had happened over the passage of time. It is also a historical document when it goes to talk about Chaucer's age, it goes to talk about Shakespeare's age, it goes to talk about many other changes of language which were brought by different writers over the time and different communities over the time. So that is why it is a historical document as well. The line are only 39 in number. It's a kind of defense of the Jamaican dialect of English language. But however, as most of the post-colonial poetry is there, it's a kind of free verse. There is no rhyme scheme used in that way. But whatever the way has been adopted, the message has been conveyed very, very simply and is understood as well. So, in that way, this is the defense of the poet against the demeaning, undermining of Jamaican dialect. So, that's it from me for this day. Hopefully, some of the clarity might have come about the poem, but I know there could be some loopholes as well, and someone can point out if there is any so that more more researches on the language, the style, and the dialect, and the poem and the poetry could be made. However, in the end, I would declare that this is one of the best defenses offered by Bennet for English language. But actually, she is defending the Jamaican dialect, the Patois dialect. So, thank you very much for watching, and that's it from me for this day. Hopefully, seeing you and meeting you in some other recordings as well.